Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another episode of Learning FreeCAD for Beginners, where we're teaching the fundamentals of FreeCAD from a beginner's perspective while we understand and learn workflows. In this tutorial I'm going to help you visualize how we create a more complex part and the actions we take to create the part from Boolean operations. In this case we're using intersections. So I'm going to show you a physical object, and then we're going to use a part workflow and explain with that object the operations we take to create that form, as well as understanding the Boolean operation for the intersection. It'll give you a way of thinking about your objects so you can determine the workflow that you need to complete your model. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look at this technique. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So a good example of the workflow that we use with Boolean modeling is something like modeling a fork or even a spoon. So we've got both of these here. Now to do this, if we take this fork for example, we wouldn't attack it from the top straight away. It looks quite a complex model to tackle, but it is quite simple. If we flip it this way, and what we want to do is look at the profile. So this is the first thing that you'll sketch out. So this profile here. After that, when we actually sketch this out and extrude it, we get this extrusion. So this shape here going forwards. Once this goes forwards, then we can tack it from this way. So looking at any curvature that's coming around here. And then we add this to the model. And we'll probably change the model to something like a sweep or a loft to get that curvature. We're still only dealing with the profile from the side and the curvature from the front. So what you'll end up with is basically a rectangle around this bounding box of the fork. Once we get that curvature, you may not end up with any curvature this way. So it may be just a straight extrude along here going this direction. Then we can tackle the above. And this is where the Boolean features come in. So we would actually sketch this shape out and then extrude this forwards. And that'll be extruded through the shape we've just done before. So this is two extrudes. With this one and the shape before, we'd use an intersection. And this will create the shape that we need. Let's take this spoon. We've got the same thing. If we look to this side, we have the profile. But you can see straight away we have this curvature. So we bring it around this way, we've got the curvature of the spoon going this way. So there's two ways to tackle this. We can create a profile going along this way, which will be a path for a sweep, and create curves this way going along here. It will still be a rectangle. So look at the boundary box. So it still will be a rectangle, but we'll have the curvature there that we can create the intersection with. Or we take the profile, this one, and create multiple profiles going this way. So we create our first profile, then we create another profile that takes into account this middle curvature, and then we create our last profile, which is basically a copy of this because it sits on this side, the underneath side. So come around this side, it sits on this side. We then loft or sweep across those, going this way, and then we bring this around this side and then draw our shape, extrude that through the loft this way, and then create the intersection through both pieces. So let's look at tackling the fork. We're going to be using the part workflow. So in the sketcher first, we're going to create our first sketch and create a new document and create our first sketch. Now we're looking at the profile from the side. So this will be the YZ plane. So this one here. I'm going to use a B-spline. We can use the endpoint or endpoint arcs or any arcs we want to, but I'm going to use the B-spline just to keep it easier. And I'm going to sketch the curvature of the fork, the neck, and then the handle. Something like this. Hit escape, and we've got that curvature in there. We can make some finer adjustments. And bring this across. And we're just roughing out the fork in there. You can take more time to do this. We're just getting that fork shape in there. Now it's worth keeping a note of where the actual head starts, so the head of the fork. So these will be the prongs and this will be the head. And this is where we want to have some kind of reference in here for our top sketch to look down, because our neck of that fork, when it comes round, should line up with the top sketch as well to get our curvature correct. Now the fork is quite easy because it hasn't got any curvature. I hit close, it hasn't got a curvature going this way. So we have our fork, and I'm going to extrude this forwards. Now I can make this a thicker object by adding another line that follows this if I want, but all I'm going to do is come over to the part workbench. We now need to extrude this. So first of all, we click the sketch and click the extrude. We need to add some thickness to this, so this is the thickness of the fork. So I'm going to be extruding it along the Z. And if we look to the custom direction Z, so we're using the custom directions for this, and we'll change this to around about 2 mil. So we extruded it this way. Now we want to extrude it to make the length going this way. So you can extrude and extrude. So click on the extrude and get ourselves orientated. So we want to extrude along the X. So click extrude, custom direction, which is X, got a 1 in there. And this is going to be the length because we're going to be sketching above this. So we'll go something like 60 millimeters. It doesn't matter how long that is, and make it symmetrical. So extrude out this way and this way with a symmetry. Let's hit OK. We've got that extrusion in there. It may seem a bit large, but this is perfect for what we want. So we look at the top. We can start sketching our fork in here. Now, I haven't done any curvature this way because there's no need to with this fork. As we saw before, it hasn't got any curvature this way. If I was doing this with a spoon, then I would. So let's bring this around this way. And you can see what we've got there. Click on top and we'll create another sketch. Make sure nothing's selected. Come over to the sketcher and click on the sketch icon. Go along the XY plane and hit OK. Flip this around, but you can see how that's being positioned there. We want to move the sketch above this. So we're not intersecting through this. Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves confused, and we need to see this underneath. So click on that sketch, look at the placement, and we want to move it because it's not attached anywhere. And we can see that axis there along the Z axis. So position Z and move that up all the way out to the top. So it's sitting above there. So that means that no view section will actually remove any of this below. Now we can start sketching the fork in here. This is the reason why we went symmetrical, because when we did the extrude, our shape was sitting along here, our geometry, and we extruded out this way and this way. This means I can just sketch 1/2 of the fork. So let's start sketching that fork in here. I'm going to use the create an arc by its endpoint and rim point. So this one here. And we've got to look to see where the neck is. So our neck is about here. So we may want to place a reference on here just to get an idea of where that neck is. So let's place a line, say across here. And this will be construction geometry. And we look to the right we can see, so at the moment it's sitting here, which is more or less right, so that's fine. So that makes that construction geometry, so we get an idea of where the neck should be. And we'll constrain that from here and place a length in here. You notice I haven't actually used any lengths in here. We're just demonstrating the techniques. So we say that's 35. So this is where the actual prongs will be and the neck will start here. So let's get the neck in. Endpoint and rim point arc. And we'll create an arc, something like that. And the second arc will be something like this. And our prongs will be along here somewhere. Can hit escape and just bring this out a bit further. So now we've got that in there. Let's zoom in and start creating the prongs. So I'm going to use the polyline and I'm going to come in to about here, come out and connect up like so. Hit escape, escape again, and just bring this in. Make sure that this line, now let's see where we are. We've got the top, so this is actually going to be horizontal like that. Now we've got to create one more, so endpoint or endpoint arc. Let's create a small arc in here, like so, and create the prong. So we're going to use the polyline again, connect up to that arc, come out. We'll place that in line in a minute, and let's come back, like so. Let's take all these, place them in line. There we go, those are in line. Remember we're around this way, so a bit confusing. And we'll do the same with these two. So we've got the starts of our fork. I'm going to take this, the whole object, and then click that center line. Go up to sketch, sketch tools, and then symmetry. Bit large at the moment, but we can place all of these in line with each other, and I'm going to bring this around. Let's bring it around this way so we can see what we're doing and do this properly. Those in line, and we've got all of these need to be in line, so I'm going to take these, place those in line. Got a redundant constraint there, let's delete those. So all those will move. And come down to the bottom and place those in line. The top still move, so those need to be in line as well. So I'm going to take these 2 points as well for those arcs, place those in line, and we'll take all these, so this one, this one, this one, and this one, place those in line as well. Got some redundancy there, let's click on that and hit delete. So we've got some movement back and forth there, so you can see those moving. These arcs should be equal. And what I'm going to do is just bring these in. So these two, and place an arc in there. Hit escape, take this point and this line, and we'll put a point on line constraint there. So we've got starts of our fork. Maybe a bit big, but it's just to get an idea of how to do this. Let's place an arc in here as well. Bring this out, and we'll place that point on this line. Point on line constraint or point on object constraint. Bring these in, and we can decide where this is going to go. So let's bring that in this way and take this arc and this curve, make those tangent. There we go, okay that. So we've got the starts of our fork there. It's a bit large, but gets an idea of how we're going to do this. Now what we do is we extrude this. So come over to the part workbench, click on the sketch of the fork, extrude it, and set this to some size that's going to allow us to extrude right the way through here. So I'm going to go 100 millimeters. It's going to go upwards, so let's come into that extrude and come down and set it to reverse. Or we could have moved this down. So you can see that we've got those two extrudes there. It's a bit over the top, but it emphasizes what we're trying to do. Now we add the Boolean intersection. Take one extrude, that one there, control click the other. So come up to part, Boolean, and then intersection. We now have our fork. It's a bit on the chunky side, but it shows you how that's actually produced. If we look to the left, we've got the common in there. Inside the two extrudes, inside that, the sketch, and the extrude, and the other sketch. So you can see that other sketch going through there. Let's just control click those and hide those. So that's the fork done. So let's have a look at the part workflow for creating the spoon. We're going to do something different here. We're going to create a closed sketch. So rather than creating an offset to create the thickness, we're going to create the top and bottom skin to create a solid rather than a surface. The reason being is because sometimes when we loft, which we'll be using in this workflow, we sometimes can't use an offset in there, it'll fail. So for safety, we will create a closed sketch to create a solid profile. I'm in the sketcher, I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to go along the YZ plane because we're using the profile along the side of the spoon. Now remember, back to the spoon, we're looking at 3 profiles. The left and right one I'm going to be the same, the middle one's going to have the curvature on. So I'm going to use an endpoint and rim point arc to create the spoon profile. I'm going to come in and just create a small profile like so. And I might take this point and this point, connect those together. And then I'm going to use a B-spline to create the handle. So attaching to this point, and we'll create a handle like so. And hit escape. And we can adjust this handle to get the curvature and the look and feel that we want. Watch out for tangency coming across here because we want to make flowing throughout the sketch. So something like this, so you can see we've got a nice flow through there. I'm not too bothered about the scale of this, it's just showing the technique. So we've got the first part of our profile, but we need the top and bottom, and we'll close it at the sides to create our closed sketch. To do that, I'm going to highlight the whole lot. So first of all, we highlight it using click and drag. Now we've got to choose a point because I'm going to copy this, but it's going to copy and be positioned by the last point that we selected. So for instance, see this point here, if I select it once and then select it again, so I've unselected it and then selected it, that becomes the last point that we selected. That means when we come up to the sketch tools and copy, we get a line that we can position that, and we get the constraints as well, so you can see we've got a vertical constraint there. So we can go from this point, if we look down to the bottom, notice the last measurement there is 0 millimeters, and we can come up and decide that I want this something like 2.5, and when we click, we get that there. Let's zoom in and create an arc between these two. So I'm going to use the endpoint and rim point arc. Hover over this point, I've got the auto constraints on, and avoid redundant constraints there. So click, coincident constraint, click, coincident constraint, and bring this around. I'm going to take this arc and make those tangent to each other. We get the substitution. That's now tangent. We'll do the same with the bottom one. Place a tangency across there. Then I'm going to take these 2 points and use a distance and set this to 2.5 millimeters. That's coming to this one now. And what we're going to do is take this point and place them in a vertical length again of 2.5 millimeters. Moving along, we can see we've got this point here which needs an arc between here and here. Endpoint and endpoint arc. Bring this arc around, and we can't create a tangency between a B-spline and an arc here, so we have to eyeball this into position, or considering this is quite straight here, I'm just going to take these two and place a length of 2.5. And I'm also going to take these two and place them in vertical constraint to each other. So these still can be pulled away from each other. Control Z that. Now we can take these two, place a height 2.5. So you can see as I move that, that moves and keeps that distance away. And we repeat with these 2 points. Remembering the vertical constraint. And we're all set. So as you can see, if I move this one, we get that nice constraint there. Just hit Control Z to get back to where it was before. So we've got one profile of the spoon done. I'm going to take these 2 points, keep them in vertical line, and also take these two, zoom in, set a height of 2.5. That means now I can control the curvature of this. This is moving back and forth, so I may want to fix that. But you can see how we constrain this right down. Let's close that now. We've got our first profile. We're going to duplicate this 2 times. Click on the sketch, edit, duplicate selection, then edit, duplicate selection again. This one is going to be the middle one. So we right click, rename, and call this mid sketch. This one's going to be left, right click, rename, left sketch. And this one's going to be the right. So right sketch. The left one, we've got to send it this way. So look down at the placement after clicking on the left sketch, position, and we're going to transform that along the X position. And this is where the width of the spoon comes in. So I'm going to keep this slightly bigger so it looks quite chunky, so we get an idea of what it looks like. So we're going to set this to 20 millimeters. Take the right sketch, position, X, we'll do this minus 20. So we can see that in there. Let's bring these down a bit. So let's do this one as 15 and this one as 15. That means that when we loft through these, the middle of that loft will be here. So if I come up to View, toggle Axis Cross, you can see the middle of that loft is there. So any sketches we have, the middle of the sketch will be here as well. Let's come around to the right and bring this around so we can see that there. Now if we look, we're just going to get a solid loft from here to here. Our spoon curves in the middle, so we've got curvature here. So we can do this either before or after we've loft. We did this after. What would happen? We come over to
part and make sure nothing's selected. Come up to part, loft. It's going to ask us for the profiles. Doesn't matter which way around you place these as long as the middle one's the second one you picked. So right sketch, move that over to selected profiles, middle sketch, move that over, and also the left sketch. Because we've got a closed profile, we can hit create solid and hit OK. We've now got our loft. And you can see what we're going to do. We're going to place the spoon shape upon here and do an intersection, but we need to deal with this center profile. Go into the loft and come down to the mid sketch and double click it. We've got that now. We need to curve this downwards. So I'm going to control that with the curvature here. And we can bring this down and you can see underneath it the other sketch is sitting there. And we can decide how far we want this to come down. So using your spoon as a reference, we can decide on that. I might bring this out slightly as well. Because if you think about it, we're going to place the spoon here and it's going to jut out into that middle point there. So we'll bring this over here so it's out of the way and we can decide where this is going to go. Just watch out for the tangency here. We may want to release this point from the center point so we can keep tangency. Let's hit close. So you can see the curvature we got there. Now let's come to the top. And it's best to bring us around in line with the top. So we've got our vertical and horizontal alignments the same as our scene, and come over to the sketch. We're going to create a new sketch, so make sure nothing's selected and create new. This is looking down and this is going to be the profile of the spoon looking down onto the spoon, so from the XY plane. Hit OK. Now we start sketching the spoon. First thing that we must be aware of, we come round, is that this sketch has to be pulled upwards so it sits above the loft. Click on top and come over to the model, click on the sketch. We're looking along the Z plane, so here, and start moving the sketch upwards so it sits on top. We know this line here is around about the neck of this spoon. So we can use that in our sketching. Let's come in and start the sketching. I'm going to hide the loft, click on the loft and hide it because I've got these guidelines here. And I'm going to start sketching in the spoon. So I'm going to use the endpoint and endpoint arc. And we'll do one side of the spoon and use symmetry to bring this around to the other side. So let's create an arc and we could bring this arc all the way to here. Let's create another arc. And this is going to be the neck. So I'm looking at the center point, around about the center point of the arc. For that, I'm going to place the middle point of the arc onto that line. Point on object constraint. So we've got that there. And we can bring this in and decide where it's going to go. Now we need the rest of the spoon here. Again, another arc coming round and placing this around like so. And bring this out and we can change the curvature. Trying to keep it in line. So making sure it doesn't spill out the front. This is the reason why we pushed this profile forwards and mid profile forwards. Let's bring this back. So now we've got that. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to highlight all these again. This time I'm using symmetry. So click for the last one, the vertical line. Come to sketch, sketch tools, and then use symmetry. Place that symmetrically across that line. we'll use these 2 points and also use symmetry constraint against this center line. Symmetry against there. Same with these two and the center line. Symmetry. And work our way down using symmetry across all those points just to make our life a bit easier. One more up here. We've got to close the spoon as well. That means if we move one of these, this moves inwards and we can control what this looks like so we can get the shape that we want. And it's just being mirrored over the other side. Now let's have a look at this. So I need to add curvature onto this end here using the endpoint and rim point arc. Those two. And just bring this around like so. Take the point, keep it on this line, point on line constraint. That automatically makes that symmetrical. And we may just be out there. So that one there. We can bring in this geometry if we want, so we can import this geometry to understand where that sits. So we can highlight that, bring that in, you can see that point there. So that sits almost upon that point, which is good. Let's move up to the top, zoom in, and add our final arc. So we have our spoon. Let's go into tasks and close that. So we have our spoon, and underneath the profiles of the loft, let's bring back the loft, hide those sketches within there because we don't need those now. Now it's the same process. We've got the spoon sketch at the top, we've got the loft at the bottom. Make sure nothing's selected, come over to the part workbench. We'll do our extrusion. We'll have to extrude downwards. Take that sketch of the top profile, extrude, and we're going to send it downwards through the z-axis, which is normal to this sketch. Z-axis runs this way. Along normal, we need reverse, and we'll do this. Well, we have no idea how far this goes down, so let's do this for 60. And see how far that gets us. So let's push that right the way past there. Now this is where we look to make sure that this extrude, if we look at it from say the bottom or the top, that it's been encapsulated by that loft, which it has. Now it's just a case of doing the intersection. Take the loft, control click the extrude, or we can do it from the screen. Doesn't matter which way around you do it, either or. Loft extrude, extrude loft. Come to the part. We want the Boolean operations and we want the intersection. And we have our finished spoon. If we got some problems here, so you can see we've got this dip going along here, then we can come into the loft and just have a look to see what's going on. So you can see how that's curved over there. And we can adjust this, so we can move this curve up if we wanted to, or move this back away from here just to get rid of that. Totally up to you. For instance, if I took that midsection and let's zoom out and move this forwards and hit close, you can see we've got rid of that there. Just make sure we haven't damaged the bottom, and we've got to readjust the extrude because there might be a hole in the bottom. But that's how to create that spoon with all those profiles. And we'll just hide the axis cross. So that's the power of intersections. I hope you're enjoying these videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content.
and that's at www.patreon.com/mangojelly-solutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.